Welcome to my video. I'll trust you'll find it helpful and informative. Please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you.
So we are in Business Management 1 slides for learning module 4, and we are looking at costing and pricing. Okay. First thing we need to understand is that we need to distinguish between the two types of accounting or the two accounting fields. The one being financial accounting and the one being managerial accounting. And managerial accounting is really what this chapter is about. So in financial accounting, or the bookkeeping and financial statements that you guys are doing, we are looking at reports to persuade or reports to persons outside the organization, while with managerial accounting, we are looking at reports to persons inside the organizations. And of course, those people inside the organization are the managers. Financial accounting focuses on past events. You know, your financial statements only has to be submitted to SARS 10, 11 months, sometimes even after the ending of the financial year. Now, that will not be very helpful for managers in the workplace. So therefore, managerial accounting focuses on the future. Financial accounting, everything must be very objective and verifiable, while with managerial accounting, it's more about relevancy and flexibility. Okay. A manager can ask you for a report today, and if you don't hand in that report today, it's already too late and you have to change that report for tomorrow. Financial accounting, the information must be precise. You guys know that when you work in the ledger and bookkeeping, you're actually trying to get that to balance. And more important in managerial accounting is that the information must be in time. Financial accounting, those accounting reports refers to the whole organization. But for managerial accounting, we are looking at more detailed reports to specific stakeholders so that those specific stakeholders can do their work better. In accounting, we have, or in financial accounting, we have to follow the generally accepted accounting practices in South Africa, or the financial or international financial rules. But when it comes to managerial accounting, there is no fixed format. It will be done according to the format that that manager wants the information. And then, of course, as far as financial accounting is concerned, the reports are mandatory. But as far as managerial accounting is concerned, those reports are voluntary. Voluntary in terms of the organization, not voluntary in terms of the person that has to prepare the report. You go and say to your boss in the workplace, no. You want a managerial accounting report. Jacques said it was voluntary and I don't feel like giving it to you. Then you will get your butt fired. It's not going to work like that. Okay. I just given you a note there that says managerial accounting helps managers to plan, measure deviations from set budgets, and make alternative plans. Okay, so that is really what managerial accounting is about and how it differs from financial accounting. Now, when we do managerial accounting, we have to classify the different types of cost. Okay, so here I've given you a slide with the cost classification. So the primary classification is it manufacturing cost or is it non-manufacturing cost? And of course, that is also the way we normally report on it. So manufacturing cost includes our direct material, which is the material that is used in the physical production of the things. That's direct material. Then we also have direct labor, which are the people who are working specifically on that thing, and then the manufacturing overheads. Now, sometimes these classifications can be a little tricky, because if, for instance, I'm sitting at my wooden desk now. So if I'm making wooden desks, then of course the wood would be the direct material. The carpenter would be direct labor. The little handles will be part of the direct material. But the glue I use to put the different panels together, that might not be direct material. That is more likely to be part of manufacturing overheads or the little screws that I use. So obviously, when I buy the wood, I'm going to buy the wood per meter, and I know how many meters of wood I need to manufacture a desk, and I might plan for some wastage. But when it comes to the little screws and the glue that I'm using, it will complicate the manufacturing process if I'm actually going to know exactly how much glue I need to use on the desk. So say for instance, I have a standard, and so I use exactly the amount of glue that I had to use, and it turns out that the day was cold or hot or something that affected the glue, and then we sell the desk and it falls apart, and I say to my managers, well, no, the glue was my direct material. You only allow me to use one little canister of glue on a desk, and so I ran out, and so that last panel was with some glue and some spit. Then you're also going to fire me immediately. So that's the difference. And then of course, when it comes to the non-manufacturing cost, we have the marketing and selling cost and the administrative cost. And that will obviously include all the people who work in the organization. Now, there is a concept that we have that is called applied overheads. Now, applied overheads is very important when we actually do real costing in a company, but it is not part of this chapter. Okay, so for some reason, with the folk at the ICB decided that we are not going to look at applied overheads in this chapter, but if you ever get to cost and management accounting, the subject, then of course we will have a look at applied overhead. So that is one way of classifying cost, is the way that I've just said. And then also, cost can be classified in terms of, is it fixed cost or is it variable cost? Okay, so really, the slide is a little confusing because maybe that should be on top and that should come to the bottom, because this is really another cost classification. Either costs are fixed or variable. Now, if it is fixed, it is not dependent on the production volume. And if it is variable, it is dependent on the production volume. Now, there is some relation between fixed cost and production cost, and variable cost and non-manufacturing cost, but it is not as simple as that, because think about it. Your direct material will always be a variable cost. But your direct labor might not be a variable cost, because even if you have people who are manufacturing and you pay them only for manufacturing, if you don't pay them on a work rate scheme or a piece rate scheme, but you give them a salary, then their fixed to you is cost and not variable. So it is not as simple as thinking that all your manufacturing cost is variable and all your non-manufacturing cost is fixed. It doesn't work that way. Okay. But when we do our break-even analysis, then we use the concept of fixed cost versus variable cost. Okay. The bottom line is that when you look at all your cost, and that's how classification works, any cost item you must be able to fit it in somewhere. Okay, and that is what is important. So when we do our cost analysis, we will look at fixed cost and variable cost, and then we have cost that we regard as uncontrollable cost. Now that is another classification. So classification 1 is manufacturing cost versus non-manufacturing cost. Classification 2 is fixed cost versus variable cost. And classification 3 is controllable cost as opposed to uncontrollable cost. Now, if we talk about our controllable cost, those are costs that we can control by eliminating certain wastages, by sticking to budgets and things like this. But there are some things that are just out of our control. And one of those uncontrollable costs is sunk cost. And that means that is the cost if you drill a borehole at your factory. Oh, no, that's not what it means. But it does mean is that it is incurred cost that cannot be changed. So for instance, you have the choice of whether you are going to buy a factory or whether you are going to lease a premises for 10 years. The moment you decide that you're going to lease a premises, you will sign a lease agreement, and that lease agreement is now binding you into a 10-year agreement. Now, it doesn't help if 2 years later you say, oh, you know what, I really should have bought a site instead. It's too late. You still have 8 years left on your lease agreement, and so you have to live with it. So that is cost incurred that cannot be changed. Once it is done, it's done. Now, hindsight, we always say hindsight is fantastic, but we don't have hindsight. So some of the cost, it just means sunk cost, it's committed to, there's nothing we can do about it once we've entered into that cost. And then we have opportunity cost. Now, opportunity cost is the cost of not choosing the other option. Okay. So that is the thing where you say, you know what, if only I had bought this machine instead of the other, because if I bought the more expensive machine, then I would have had it for 3 years longer. I didn't know that the less expensive machine would break after 3 years. Shucks, I should know better next time. But you wait until next time. There's nothing you can do about it now. Okay, so that is the first two parts really of this chapter. It is firstly the difference, the nature, let's call it the nature of managerial accounting, and then secondly our cost classification. Now in your learning material textbook there's a lot more about it, but really this is what is asked in test or exams. And by the way, guys, this part, that question is a test and exam question. I can guarantee you it's always there. And this one sometimes is, but the long explanations that you have in the textbook, and that has kept me busy and which I'm still busy with, that is not really in the exam. The only thing they want to know is, do you know how cost classifications work?
Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you found it valuable, please subscribe and like.